At a moment when the Middle East stands once again at the edge of uncertainty, a single warning from Washington has sent ripples across global power centers. This is not just another diplomatic statement. This is a calculated signal, one meant to be heard loudly in Tehran, Tel Aviv, Ankara, and every strategic capital watching the Persian Gulf. What unfolded last Thursday was not an isolated event. It was the latest chapter in a long, volatile confrontation that now threatens to reshape regional and global stability. On Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump issued a stark warning to Iran. Speaking with unmistakable firmness, he declared that any violent crackdown on anti-government protesters or any move to restart Iran's nuclear program would invite serious consequences. This warning was not rhetorical. It was backed by action. According to Reuters, the Trump administration ordered a massive U.S. naval fleet to move toward the Persian Gulf, accompanied by plans to deploy additional air defense systems to protect American bases in the region. The timing of this warning is crucial. Iran has been facing renewed internal unrest, with sporadic protests erupting in multiple cities. These demonstrations, driven by economic pressure, political frustration, and long-standing grievances, have once again exposed deep cracks within Iran's domestic structure. For Washington, this moment presents both a risk and an opportunity. Risk of escalation, and opportunity to increase pressure on Tehran without firing a single shot. The U.S. naval movement toward the Persian Gulf is not symbolic. Historically, such deployments have preceded major geopolitical shifts. The Persian Gulf remains one of the world's most strategic waterways, carrying nearly 20% of global oil supply. Any disruption here would immediately affect energy prices, global inflation, and economic stability far beyond the Middle East. By moving its fleet, the United States is signaling readiness, not necessarily for war, but for deterrence at the highest level. Alongside naval forces, the planned deployment of advanced air defense systems adds another layer to the strategy. These systems are designed to counter missile and drone attacks, a clear reference to Iran's growing arsenal of ballistic missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles. From Iraq to Syria to the Gulf states, U.S. military installations remain within range of Iranian capabilities. Washington's message is clear. American assets will be protected and any attack will not go unanswered. As Washington applied pressure, the international community responded swiftly. On Friday in Geneva, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights delivered a sharp warning to Tehran. Addressing an emergency session of the Human Rights Council, he demanded an immediate halt to what he described as reckless and excessive repression of protesters. More importantly, he revealed that several countries are urging the UN to collect concrete evidence of human rights violations in Iran, evidence that could later be used for legal action. This development elevates the crisis from a regional standoff to a potential international legal battle. Documentation of human rights abuses opens the door to sanctions, international arrest warrants, and long-term diplomatic isolation. For Iran, this represents a serious threat, not just to its leadership, but to its legitimacy on the global stage. Tehran's response was swift and uncompromising. Iranian officials warned that any attack against the country would be viewed as an all-out war. A senior Iranian government figure stated unequivocally that Iran would deliver a hard response to any form of aggression. This language is familiar, yet its context makes it more dangerous than before. Iran is no longer isolated in the way it once was. It has deepened ties with Russia, expanded influence through regional proxies, and strengthened military cooperation across multiple fronts. The rhetoric escalated further when Turkey entered the conversation. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, in a televised interview, warned that Israel is actively seeking an opportunity to strike Iran. He cautioned that such an attack would plunge the Middle East into deeper instability. Turkey's warning carries weight. As a NATO member with strong regional influence, Ankara's position reflects growing concern that a single miscalculation could ignite a multi-front conflict. This warning was not made in isolation. Just a day earlier, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan held a phone conversation with Iranian President. During that call, Erdogan clearly stated Ankara's opposition to any foreign intervention in Tehran's internal affairs. Turkey's stance reveals a delicate balancing act, maintaining ties with the West while resisting actions that could destabilize its neighborhood and damage its economic and security interests. At this stage, the crisis has evolved into a complex chessboard. The United States is applying military and diplomatic pressure. Iran is issuing counter-threats while managing internal unrest. The United Nations is preparing a legal framework that could redefine accountability. Turkey is positioning itself as a regional stabilizer while warning of Israeli intentions. Each actor is moving carefully, yet every move increases the risk of escalation. The key question now is not whether tensions exist, they clearly do. The question is how far each side is willing to go and whether deterrence will hold or collapse. History shows that moments like this rarely remain static. They either cool down through negotiation or spiral into confrontation through miscalculation. As of now, the situation remains volatile but unresolved. Naval fleets move, diplomats speak, warnings are issued, and alliances are tested. The world watches closely, knowing that what happens next could redefine power dynamics across the Middle East. And far beyond it. To understand where this crisis may lead, we must look beyond the headlines and examine the deeper strategic calculations at play. This is not simply about protests in Iran or a U.S. naval deployment. It is about leverage, deterrence, and the future balance of power in a region that has rarely known stability. For the United States, the current strategy appears to rest on controlled pressure. By moving military assets without launching direct strikes, Washington aims to deter Iran while avoiding a full-scale war. This approach allows the U.S. to reassure allies, protect its interests, and maintain global credibility, especially at a time when multiple geopolitical crises are unfolding simultaneously. However, deterrence only works if both sides believe the other is willing to act. Iran, for its part, has built its security doctrine around resistance. Its leadership believes that showing weakness invites intervention. As a result, Tehran is likely to respond to pressure with symbolic defiance, military exercises, missile tests, or indirect actions through regional allies rather than immediate confrontation. This is where the risk lies. Proxy conflicts have historically served as pressure valves in U.S.-Iran relations. From Lebanon to Yemen to Iraq, indirect engagement has allowed both sides to test boundaries without crossing red lines. But as military assets concentrate and rhetoric hardens, the margin for error shrinks dramatically. Israel's role adds another layer of complexity. Israel views Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat. Any indication that Tehran is restarting its nuclear program could trigger preemptive action. Such a move would almost certainly draw in the United States and provoke retaliation across multiple fronts, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iranian-aligned groups in Syria. Turkey's position is equally strategic. Ankara fears regional chaos more than almost any other outcome. War would disrupt trade routes, energy supplies, and border security. By opposing foreign intervention while warning against Israeli strikes, Turkey is attempting to prevent escalation without openly siding against its NATO partners. This balancing act reflects Turkey's broader ambition to act as a regional power broker. Economically, the stakes could not be higher. Even the perception of instability in the Persian Gulf can drive oil prices upward. A sustained crisis could add inflationary pressure to already fragile global markets. Developing economies would feel the impact first, but no country would be immune. Now consider a what-if scenario. What if Iran intensifies its crackdown, prompting the UN to take concrete legal action? This could lead to expanded sanctions, further isolating Iran economically. In response, Iran might restrict maritime traffic or encourage proxy attacks, escalating tensions without declaring war. Another scenario. What if Israel strikes Iranian facilities? Even a limited strike could spiral into a regional conflict within days. U.S. forces would be drawn in, oil prices would spike, and diplomatic channels would collapse under the weight of military realities. There is also a less dramatic but equally significant possibility. What if sustained pressure forces Iran back to negotiations? A renewed diplomatic process could ease tensions, but it would require concessions from all sides, concessions that may be politically costly in the current climate. Ultimately, this crisis is a test of leadership. It will reveal whether global and regional powers can manage competition without catastrophe. It will show whether international institutions still have the ability to influence outcomes, or whether military power alone dictates the future. The world stands at a crossroads. One path leads toward escalation, instability, and long-term damage. The other, though narrow and uncertain, leads toward restraint and negotiation. History will judge which path was chosen, not by words spoken, but by actions taken in these critical days. For now, the message is clear. This is not just Iran's crisis or America's warning. It is a global moment, one that demands attention, caution, and strategic wisdom.